After the tragic events of the Tohoku earthquakes, Toei found itself in a very familiar, awkward position.
Just like what they did back with O-Ranger after the Kobe earthquakes and the Tokyo subway sarin gas attacks, they tried to lighten up on their programming, especially Precure. I've already gone into detail how it affected Sweet, and while it fared comparatively better than O-Ranger did in its fallout, ratings and toy sales were significantly down from the highs Hard Cat had reached. Thus, repeating the same patterns of O-Ranger, which followed up with a more lighthearted season in Car Ranger, Precure's next production was this season.
Well, it was mostly lighthearted. We'll get to those episodes eventually.
While we're still on the topic of Sentai, it's worth mentioning that Car Ranger wasn't the savior of the franchise like May claimed, as for much of its run, it had lower ratings than even O-Ranger, and much lower toy sales. Now, I personally haven't seen either Sentai, but I imagine the goofiness of Car Ranger turned away some.
Just based on what we saw in Power Rangers Turbo, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Pizza Pocket Rangers, anyone? With that said though, did Precure suffer a similar fate? Well, surprisingly enough, no.
This season was financially more successful in a category than Sweet, and remains one of the higher rated Precure seasons of the 2010s.
In one of my earlier videos, back when I was an even worse editor than I am now, I stated this was my overall favorite Precure season. Does that opinion still apply? Well, let's take a look at Smile Precure to find out. Why aren't we cutting to my intro? Oh, you want me to talk about that, huh? Well, let me just sum it up with this.
Trash all over the ring!
Yeah, let's face facts. As much as we love Saban as kids, it had become a sad husk of what it formerly was in its final days. If you want more details, go watch my Glare Force videos, but if you want a quick summary, I'll just say that while I went into Saban's adaptation with an open mind and tried to remain optimistic, that quickly faded once Doki Doki rolled around, and instead of taking the long-running property seriously, they turned it into their own abridged series.
And those aren't my words alone. There are actual testimonies from former employees on Glassdoor.com that paint it as such.
I don't know what Hasbro is gonna do with it, but even if it's nothing, it'll still be better than Saban.
And that's all I'll say about that. Let's focus on what's important with Smile Precure. Can we cut to my intro now? Thank you.
Our series opens with anime cliche number 5.
It's not the oldest cliche out there, but it's probably the most overused.
This is Miyuki Hoshizora, a middle school girl obsessed with fairy tales, who, to her credit, at least recognizes how her character is just going through the usual motions.
なんて絵本みたいにはいかないか。お?
Sir, we spot a cliche. Repeat, overused bogey inbound.
Meet Candy, our resident fairy mascot of the season, whose voice you might recognize even if you're not the biggest anime fan.
キャンディーは絵本の国メルヘンランドの妖精サックです。
That's right, it's the voice of the famous electric mouse Pokemon herself, Ikoe Otani. She also previously played Olivia from Hardcatch's movie outing, but it's clear this role is more in her wheelhouse, as unlike some of her contemporaries, she is a natural fit for the cuddly little mascot character. This notion is reinforced by Miyuki, who tries to figure out what sort of cute critter she is.
I don't know, maybe a mouse?
She loses track of Candy, but does pick up a peculiar looking book she dropped.
Jeez, the chapter on the rainbow vomiting gnomes is long.
We then pretty smoothly transition into the OP of the series, which I will admit is one of my favorites of the franchise, if only because it does an excellent job of portraying the general personalities and quirks of each of our main heroines, on top of having a total earworm of a song. Speaking of which, all said heroines turn out to be a part of the same homeroom. Gotta love it when anime just streamlines stuff like that. Anyway, aside from Yuki, we're also introduced to Akane Hino, no relation to that fire-based magical girl, who helps her with her introduction. Now, Green River, the straight man to everyone's antics. Reika Aoki, again no relation. And Yayoi Kisei, the closet otaku, who would go on to become the most popular character on the show, even being the first one to get an SH figure art.
Really, with how popular she became, you'd almost think she was putting on an act. Like she was only pretending to be cute in order to get that early toy deal and eventually work her way towards world domination. But that'd just be crazy. Never trust the yellow cures.
After school, Miyuki tries searching for candy and accidentally stumbles upon the Stargate after moving some books around in a specific order. She's transported to what looks like a library within the Great Deku Tree. Well, actually, it's literally the center of every bookcase in the world. And after again inputting the specific code needed to activate the bookshelf teleportation by accident.
Really, Miyuki, if you keep up using your luck like this, you're gonna run out of it sooner than later.
She's transported back to her town. More specifically, she was transported near Candy's location, who just so happened to be running away from an actual big bad wolf. This is Wolfrun, a general of the Bad End Kingdom, and by far the most popular villain of this season, even getting a body pillow. And we're quickly introduced to the main objective of the villain faction, collecting any subconscious depression lurking within people's hearts by forcing it to the surface through a spell. This Bato energy, as they call it,
because anime villains never have any good naming sense,
was being collected to awaken their Dark Emperor Piero, with a literal clock counting down every time the generals collect even a small amount of Bato energy.
So yeah, for anyone who took French 101, you know that, unsurprisingly, the big bad of this series is a clown. Ugh.
Miyuki managed to escape the effects of Wolfrun's spell, likely because she was holding candy. Don't worry, it'll make sense later. Wolfrun then threatens to eat candy.
Okay, just saying that out loud doesn't actually sound so bad.
But Miyuki bravely tries to defend her.
じゃあなんでそいつをかばうんだ。
わかんない。でもこんなちっちゃな子がいじめられてたら誰だって守ろうと思うよ。
And of course, after giving the standard Precure spiel, comes the standard rewards.
キラキラ輝く未来の光。キュアハッピー。
Still, since Miyuki was more of a reader than a fighter, she turned to old cliches for help.
3匹の子豚じゃ狼さんはレンガのお家を吹き飛ばせなくてハッピーエンドよ。
Pretty sure the pig also locked the door and ate the wolf after he tried to sneak in through the chimney after the wolf ate his brothers. Yeah, old fairy tales are kind of messed up.
And it's pointless anyway, as Wolfrun uses this opportunity to show off how monsters of the week for the show are created.
Points to the character designers for going with the Ronald McDonald color scheme. Adds to the creepiness. Granted, he's not quite as creepy as actual McD stuff, but still.
Miyuki ends up pulling the same trick as her senior from 2 years prior, but with a little more success. I could steer up your skirt, you know. Eventually, she does defeat the Akambe with her finisher after a few failed attempts.
I can make so many inappropriate jokes just based off of that attack's name, but I'll let Miyuki's face do the work for me.
The purified Akambe leaves behind a product placement, cure decor, and Wolfrun retreats, ending the first episode of this series of 1001 memes.
Oh yeah, you thought Miyuki's attack was the end of it? We're just on episode 1.
The preceding episodes all see the remaining heroines join Miyuki's team. We start off with Akane, though before that we get an introduction to how the cure decors work. Realizing that she was going to need help collecting all the decors, Candy suggested they recruit 4 more Precure. And to her credit, unlike previous fairies, she doesn't try to recruit them in a way that would blow Miyuki's secret identity. Oh no, Miyuki herself almost does it. As a result of her search though, she does end up getting closer to Akane, learning more about her in the process. This included the fact that she was only a self-proclaimed ace of the volleyball club. Seeing her new friend struggle, Miyuki agreed to help her practice. The next day, Akane seems ready to show off her stuff when guess who shows up? This time, Wolfrun specifically targeted the volleyball club, pointing out how the more effort people put towards a goal, the greater the inherent doubt and despair will be. Miyuki tries to stop him, but her inexperience leads to her missing her target, and not helping matters is the fact that her MP is no better than Megumin's.
これくらいのことで泣かないもん。ハッピーが逃げちゃう。スマイルスマイル。
Saying it like that kind of makes you sound like a masochist, Miyuki. I mean, I know your actress's other characters kind of fall into that category, but that doesn't mean you should too.
Still, those words manage to reach Akane and snap her out of Wolfwood's spell. Moved by Miyuki's words, she tries to help her, and such hot emotions urge her the power of the sun, and geez, I never knew makeup was so flammable.
太陽さんさん熱血パワーキュアサニー
I'd be careful if I were you, Akane. You're kind of infringing on the IP of one of your seniors. She comes from a rich family, just saying.
Anyway, she defeats the Akambe, and our Precure count is up to 2. Their search for more members continues into the next episode, with the 2 getting close to Yayoi after becoming fans of her drawings. They nominate her for a poster competition with the theme of keeping their school clean. Yayoi is apprehensive at first due to her self-confidence issues.
Though I still say she was putting on an act to get that deal with Bandai.
Still, Akane and Miyuki manage to support her, and she eventually does finish an impressive little poster with a superhero janitor.
Not coming, noob noob?
Oh, no, I got stuff to do here.
Unfortunately, she doesn't win the competition, essentially earning just an honorable mention, while the actual winner was a fan of Junji Ito.
Because yeah, I'm sure a lot of students cleaning up their school love to be reminded of the dissolving classroom. Believe me, you don't want to see the cover to this thing. I got strange looks from the guys at the bookstore.
And after Junji Jr. decided to rub his victory in the poor girl's face, Yaoi teared down her own poster, running off in shame. This ends up attracting the attention of the second general of the Bad End Kingdom, Akaoni.
Though try as you might, dude, you'll never be in the same league as the Banana or the Grape Oni.
He collects the bad energy for the week and converts Yaoi's poster into an Akambe. And much like last time, our established heroines mess up their attacks, requiring the intervention of a new heroine.
ピカピカピカリじゃんけんぽんキュアピース
Yaoi probably has the most unique transformation of her team, and not because she uses her compact in the absolute wrong way, but more on that in the next episode. Anyway, her superheroine debut doesn't start off on a strong note. And hey, she even gains approval from Pikachu itself. They defeat the Akambe with an additional charge beam, and now we're up to 3 cures. Next up on the recruitment list turns out to be Nao after she helped the trio during their lunch break. Much like Akane, she turns out to be skilled in sports, in her case, soccer.
Yeah, might want to stay away from the sport professionally for a little while after the World Cup.
Miyuki tries talking to her, but as someone with the surname Green River, she's unsurprisingly popular. The next day, she tries paying her a home visit instead, even though she doesn't know where she lives.
Yeah, in case you couldn't tell already, our main character isn't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Still, she's got a little luck left over, and just so happens to run into Nao on her way home. At Nao's house, Miyuki discovers how much her parents enjoy being ultra happy in bed. Yet, in spite of how understandably stressful it is being the eldest of 6 siblings, Nao proves to be an incredibly dedicated sister who would do anything to protect them. Enamored by her dedication to her family, Miyuki almost invites her directly to become a Precure, but is interrupted by the Tomato Oni. He targets Nao and her siblings, forcing the trio into action. Though before we actually get into the fight, Yaoi finds it necessary to explain her main gimmick.
前はチョキだったのに今回はパー鬼じゃんけん負けた鬼
You know, Hawaii once had a whole game show based around junk and pull or rock, paper, scissors. We have way too much free time in this state.
Anyway, Akaoni creates a fast-flying Akambe who proves more than a match for the much slower trio. In the middle of the fight, it almost attacks Nao's siblings. Miyuki manages to stop the first attack, but is ensnared as a result. Thus, it falls upon the eldest to protect her siblings.
勇気凛々直球勝負キュアマーチ
Nao proves to be the speedster of the team, being able to even produce sonic booms just by running. That plus some impressive wall running allows her to defeat the Akambe and protect her family. The Precure count is 4, 1 more to go. Last up on the dock is the most obvious choice, Reika.
Because really, with the exception of a few outliers, nearly every Precure team's blue is a brainiac and part of the student council.
The team seems to agree with my sentiments, as in a refreshing change of pace, they forgo the usual formalities and just ask Reika directly, even revealing all of their secrets in the process. I actually like this, as even if they are kind of jumping the gun by pushing this all on Reika, the team is being a lot more assertive than some other superheroes out there, and recognizing the futility of maintaining secret identities all the time, especially if it's just going to get in the way of their duties. Reika understandably turns down their offer due to her many other obligations, including putting on a performance of Snow White for an elementary school. Hearing about this, the Precure volunteered to help put it together. The day of the performance arrives, and geez, back away from the camera a little, Miyuki.
Take note, this is far from the worst it's going to get.
Anyway, the performance goes swimmingly until some old lady walks onto stage to provide a more live-action rendition of the evil witch from the story. As you can guess, this is the third general of the Bad End Kingdom, Majorina.
Funny, she doesn't look like Nightmare Fuel right off of Picasso.
And yes, we do go through a bit of rinse and repeat with the team failing to connect with their finishers, this time because the Akabe is a mirror with duplication powers, and Reika makes the run-in to save the day.
Look, there's inductive reasoning, there's deja vu, there's language processing, there's deja vu.
Anyway, the former Dark Dream makes her proper Precure debut. Using some basic logic, she defeats the Mirror Combi and later properly agrees to join the team. With all 5 of them together, they made the Smile Precure team.
So yeah, as an introduction arc for each of our main heroines, this was problematic.
To be fair, each episode did do a good job actually introducing us to each of the characters and their major quirks. None of them came off as all that unlikable, and while there was some overlap between Akane and Nao, every one of them felt fairly unique.
The problem though is pretty obvious. It got repetitive quick.
Now granted, it's not as bad as, say, breaking the flow of episodes with pointless filler in the middle. However, the fact that they always had to rely on a run-in to save the day doesn't exactly make the heroines look all that strong by the end.
I get that they're all still rookies, but that doesn't mean you always have to put them in a losing situation in order to make the new member look good.
Anyway, even with the team assembled, there was still the little issue that they haven't really covered that much world building throughout these first 5 episodes. Luckily, that literally came flying in episode 6 with the introduction of Candy's brother, Pop, who's a lion.
Don't ask! For God's sakes, don't ask!
Anyway, questionable genetics aside, Pop is unable to do his exposition dump without Candy's book from the first episode, so they go to retrieve it. Meanwhile, the Bad End Generals had to deal with easily the creepiest of their co-workers, Joker.
伝説の戦士プリキュアか続々してきたよ
I think even DC's guy would blow the whistle on this creep.
Back with the Precure, Pop explains how this whole conflict started. It's pretty much your standard evil force invades magical kingdom and steals the MacGuffins, but is sealed away at the last minute by the ruler of the kingdom who fell into a coma after overdoing it. Plot. Marchinland's royal queen, again, creative names all over the show, tasked Candy with retrieving the Cure Decor's Piero stole, and Pop introduced a storage device for them, the Decor.
Yeah, aside from the name, I'm not really bothered by this little bit of product placement. At least it's better than what Bill got with the Pandora panels. Worst waste of plastic ever.
With the formalities out of the way, they decide to move on to the most important piece of business.
決め台詞だよ
どうでもいい
ガーン
すこぶるどうでもいい
I'll talk about this episode's writer, who also happens to be the head writer, next time. But I'll say right now, I think he does meta jokes really well.
Also, I vote they go with the shaft poses. During all of this, Majorina launches an attack, prompting the Precure into action. Pop gives them a little tutorial on how to use the book teleportation technique, explaining how as long as they input the code, they could be transported in front of any bookshelf they desire. They of course all wish to go to a bookshelf near Majorina's attack, except for Miyuki, who at the last minute thinks about penguins. Though instead of being sent to the netherworld, she ends up at a research post at the South Pole.
Hey, look on the bright side, Miyuki. I hear they're playing baseball tomorrow.
And instead of doing the obvious and just going back the way she came, Miyuki decided it would be a good idea to go out into the middle of the Antarctic to go look for help.
Our main heroine, folks, the girl with the survival instincts of a lemming.
It falls on Pop to go rescue her. On the way back to the research outpost, he, rather out of nowhere, asks Miyuki how Candy is behaving around them. I mean, I get that he's worried about her, but come on dude, time and place, you're in the Arctic.
笑顔スマイルひらめいた
Don't you dare say you came up with a new dessert recipe.
Anyway, he gets Miyuki back just in time to help her friends, and they perform their first team pose successfully.
輝けスマイルプリキュア
Still still need to work on that follow-up though. Luckily, this gives Pop a chance to show off his totally OP transformation techniques.
そう反撃でござる。
ぺちゃんこアタック。
The new ninja wish they were on this guy's level.
Unfortunately, he's too OP and thus needs to be written out of the show with the usual "I've got everything I need to take care of" excuse. Toei never wants us to have nice things. Episode 7 focuses on the newly formed team trying to locate their own personal HQ. One obvious location was the magical library, but considering it was a bit too naturey, they tried other locations based on everyone's ideas. Reika starts things off with hers and, hey, I think you're missing a few steps there, you know. We just clearly showed it a couple minutes ago. Anyway, they end up at an outpost near Mount Fuji.
でもその道の先にはこの日本一の富士山があるの。私たちにとってこれほどふさわしい場所があるかしら。
It's almost the quiet ones who prove to be the happiest in the end.
Next up is Yayoi, who takes them to the bridge of a starship, which is actually a soundstage.
だって一度でいいから行ってみたかったんだもん。だもんやないやろ。
Even Akane is catching on to your little act.
Now tries taking them to a place full of stuffed animals, which ends up sending them to a little shop.
かわいい。ママこれ買って。
Get her while you still can, kid. Her price on eBay is gonna skyrocket later.
Last up is Akane, who just takes them to the zoo.
Young girls in a gorilla pen. Yeah, not relevant enough anymore.
Still, in spite of their multiple failures, Yuki wasn't about ready to give up. For her, she wanted to recreate the special hangout she had in her old neighborhood, similar to the one from Anne of the Green Gables. Inspired by that story, her team suggests they try that old hangout from her childhood. However, when they get there, they discover it's already occupied by some new girls and they just decide to let them have it. This of course led into a fairly standard fight with Ruford, really nothing exciting apart from the required Precure heavy lift scene. And in the end, they try something they really should have done from the start and ask to be sent to an ideal HQ location. And they end up right back in the middle of the library. Yeah, surprise, surprise, the place that pretty much exists in a pocket dimension is an ideal superhero HQ. They even managed to use a cure decor to reform a giant stump in the middle of the library into a proper house.
こらキャンディー、こんなんできるんやったらあちこち行かんと最初からこうしとけばよかったやろ。
Because we wouldn't have a plot otherwise. Also, Reiko scene alone was worth it.
Episode 8 is the first in a sort of series of episodes that could be best described as the Candy Shenanigan episodes, in which Majorina creates a new magical item, one of her associates throws it away for various stupid reasons, Candy and or the Precure stumble upon it, and hijinks ensue. It's because of episodes like these that Candy is considered to be one of the less popular Precure mascots, even earning a scrappy entry on TV tropes.
Personally, though, I don't completely agree with that. I mean, she's nowhere near Harry or even her brother's level, but I do think she's better than her immediate predecessor. But more on that when we get into the character analysis.
Anyway, Majorina's item turns out to be a pair of Freaky Friday rings that switch the minds of the wearers. They try everything to remove the rings, including using one of the cure decors.
綺麗クルー素敵。結婚指輪みたい。
What is it with this franchise and trying to ship the fairies and the humans?
Things don't get any better for them when Candy and Miyuki's body has to go to class and causes all kinds of havoc and possibly kills a few students in science class. Frustrated over how she managed to completely lower her GPA in just one day, Miyuki lashed out at Candy, causing her to run away. Meanwhile, Majorina was looking for her missing rings and even tried to ask a police officer for help.
おばあちゃん、それは。
私はまだおばあちゃんなんて年じゃないだわさ。
You know, I remember once seeing a comedy doji scene featuring these two. I kind of regret not picking it up.
The Precure spend the afternoon looking for Candy, with Miyuki regretting her earlier actions. They eventually do find her and Majorina. And unlike the incident with Inori and Tart, Candy was unable to transform into Cure Happy, likely because the Cure Pat was linked specifically to the original user's soul. Things didn't get any better when Majorina created an Akambe out of a playground toy. Despite its small size, it proved formidable due to its agility and small hitbox. With their friends in literal binds, Miyuki and Candy tried to defend one another. This led them to discover a rather unique solution to their problems.
くるくるきらめく未来の光。
Pure Candy proves to be the very definition of a lethal joke character, as not only did she maintain Happy's strength, but she was also far more agile, allowing her to keep up with the Akambe and eventually defeat it. The episode ends with Miyuki and Candy removing the rings through a convenient solution that Majorina just so happened to pull out and return to their own bodies.
Worth mentioning, this is pretty much how most Majorina episodes are resolved. Seriously, not even Saturday morning cartoon villains carry around antidotes anymore.
Where is the antidote?
You think I'd be foolish enough to bring it with me?
Episode 9 introduces us to Yayoi's home life, which includes references that are much funnier in hindsight. She's woken up by her mother through a little April Fool's prank.
Oh, so that's where she gets it from.
Wanting to celebrate the 1st of April properly, she tries pulling a prank on Miyuki, saying that she was transferring to another school. And while she could have easily let up on the joke much earlier, her inner sadist encouraged her to milk it for all it's worth.
I think we can officially say this girl is more evil than her actress's previous role.
She ends up spreading the rumor to Akane and eventually the rest of their class, all the while Yayoi is unable to tell the truth for one contrived reason or another.
This episode is honestly all kinds of hilarious and frustrating, as they just won't let this poor girl say her piece. No pun intended, but I'll take credit for it anyways.
But yeah, it really does feel like Yayoi wasn't the only one milking a joke for all it's worth, making for a rather pointless filler episode. Anyway, there's a fight with a liar-themed Akambe, obvious resolution with Yaoi apologizing to everyone, and I feel like watching the Liar Dopont episodes of Kamen Rider Double now. Episode 10 is an even more pointless filler episode, with Akane taking over her family's okonomiyaki restaurant after her father dislocates his hip. Throughout the episode, she tries to figure out the secret ingredient to her father's okonomiyaki.
Gee, is it anything like a certain DreamWorks movie that came out just a couple years before this series?
Yeah, the only really entertaining part of this episode was Wolfern trying to walk into a fancy restaurant only to get the boot for refusing to remove his cosplay.
Next time, try going around con season. They're a lot more forgiving then.
While also a filler episode, 11 is at least entertaining. It's technically another Candy Shenanigans episode, even though she wasn't the one who stumbled upon Majorina's magical item this time. Said item was basically a reverse Isun Boshi hammer that shrunk the Precure. It's a really fun episode where they pretty much hit all the Honey I Shrunk the Kid plot points within 23 minutes. They also encounter giant bugs that Nao is afraid to death of. Though as hilarious as her reactions are, you can't really blame the poor girl, especially when her friends are being a bit too laxed. Yeah, Miyuki, I'm pretty sure that Anne could easily slice you in two. However, they end up defending the bugs when they become the victims of the week. Seriously, how does one exactly quantify Bato energy? Anyway, they eventually return to normal because of Majorina's own stupidity, and the ants go on to star in a couple of summer blockbusters. We finally get back to the plot with episode 12. The Precure were getting ready for their class's overnight field trip to Kyoto and Osaka. And fortunately for Candy, she was gonna have to sit this one out. Frustrated and feeling like she was being left out of the group, Candy decided to forgo her more discreet tendencies from episode 2 and tries to force her way into the Precure's school life, nearly exposing their secret identities in the process. Again, I think this is another episode that ended up turning the fandom against Candy. Though, while I think she was definitely annoying here, I do think it benefited her character in the long run, but again, I'll save the analysis for later. Anyway, after one more screw-up where she ruins the Precure's afternoon's worth of work, Candy falls into a depression after realizing that she may not have a place on this team anymore. Even Reika trying to cheer her up does nothing, and she ends up running away. As a result, she ends up running into Wolfern, who reveals the Bad End Kingdom's new, rather clever plan. Since the cure decor balls have been both the Akambe's greatest strength and weakness, they decided to remove the decors from the equation entirely and create decorless Akambe. The Akambe would be physically weaker, but without a target to purify, it could essentially stonewall the Precure into defeat. Again, points to the villains for thinking outside the box, though Joker might have ulterior motives. Candy tries to warn the Precure, but is captured in a birdcage. Back with the Precure, after buying some snacks to take on the tray with them, and what's with the look on Yayoi's face here?
Oh no, wait. I see right through you, Sparky. You're planning your next step towards world domination, aren't you? Well, don't think you'll be able to do it without a fight towards our brothers!
Though, before they can deal with the true big bad of the series, they have to concentrate on the lesser evil in Wolfern. The Stonewall tactics proved to be effective as the Precure only end up wasting their finishers on their opponent and are almost all captured in Thanos' favorite form of attack with the exception of Reika. Candy eventually joins the fray after escaping from her cage, but again, it seems like she can't do anything to help her friends. However, with some encouragement from said friends, she does find within herself to produce a bit of a Deus Ex Machina that's not even all that impressive looking, they're just some silly crowns.
And big crown thingy. Come on, every pony, let's go!
And their new finisher is even less impressive. Still, that little asshole aside, this was actually a fairly decent episode, as they were building Candy's character and foreshadowing future events. And for her good deeds, Miyuki recognized Candy as a part of their team and decided to take her along with them on the trip. And thus, we reach probably the most infamous episode of this series.
Oh, not because it's well written or even that plot relevant, it's filler through and through.
But more because of a certain scene that will forever be remembered in the annals of the Precure fandom.
And it also gave me one of my favorite running gags for these reviews.
But I digress. Let's take a look at the episode itself, that by no mere coincidence is the 13th of the series. After arriving in Kyoto, the Precure tried to take in and enjoy the sights. Though this proves to be difficult for Miyuki when she encounters a wild Candy twice. The latter encounter leading her to take a swim in the lake. Still, with a little trip to the temples to pick up some fortune-telling papers, Miyuki was hoping she could turn her luck around.
These fortunes, by the way, are dealt out randomly, so you can get anything from excellent luck to that.
And thus, through the magic of the Fish Islands, we got the faces that probably had made little girls across the nation crying to their mommies, and had just as many snarky older fans writing to their photoshops.
Congratulations, Miyuki! You have officially joined the ranks of many Yu-Gi-Oh villains, as well as pretty much every character in Kakegurui, for having the most memeable face ever! A round of applause, everyone! God, that is terrifying!
Sure enough, this episode becomes pure slapstick gold, with Miyuki pretty much becoming the butt monkey to everyone's joke. I'd highly recommend checking this one out for yourself. As well as no masterpiece, it's still legendary. 14 opens with a recap of the nightmares of the previous episode, and the Precure continuing their little field trip across the Kansai region into Osaka. During a tour of Osaka Castle, Miyuki and Yaoi end up separated from the rest of their team, and instead of doing the smart thing like waiting near the entrance of the castle or using their cell phones if they have them, they get the bright idea to just aimlessly wander the busy city, forcing the rest of their friends to suffer through trying to look for them. It's a rather boring and kind of infuriating episode if you've ever experienced a similar situation with your own friends. At least the Monster of the Week fight was pretty epic, with the Precure fighting a Nakame-possessed Suten Taku, a tower in Osaka that's 103 meters tall. It's also one of the rare times they actually use a cure decor for something other than just being a little side gag or a minor problem solver.
Yeah, like many of the Rouse cards from Kamen Rider Blade, they're quickly forgotten about by the end of the episode. I should probably get a card binder for these.
Episode 15 of the series happened to air on Mother's Day, so they decided to make an episode set around the holiday.
Yeah, that's me every year.
It's a cute enough episode that properly embodies the day, and of course, the lesson of the episode is that it's the thought that counts. Yeah, nothing much to say about this one, though we do get some hints of Miyuki suffering from an inferiority complex, hinting at future events. And also, Miyuki's mom is pretty hot. Not really surprising that this season's moms got the most doujinshi dedicated to them. 16 is actually one of my early favorites, alongside that one. It's an episode where one of our young heroines, Reika, has an existential crisis.
By any chance, was this episode written by Yoshimi Narita? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Great writer, but she can be kind of crazy sometimes.
Though I mean that in the best of ways, as she's willing to take risks with her story concepts that on paper doesn't quite sound appropriate for a kid's show, but in execution, she either turns out insanely entertaining episodes, again look at my other favorite episodes so far in this show,
or a thought-provoking little piece that will not only connect with the young target audience, but also possibly more so with the secondary adult audience.
This episode is clearly a case of the latter, with Reika deciding to reevaluate her life after realizing that most of her current commitments, including becoming a Precure, weren't entirely of her own volition. Now, while this episode does ultimately teach the kids school is cool and can teach you all sorts of important secondary skills needed for most dream jobs, this is also the sort of subject matter that could easily connect with someone fresh out of college or suffering from a midlife crisis, or even a quarter life crisis.
You're not 30 yet. You're not 30 yet.
It's a really good episode with another quiz-type monster of the week, much like the one from Sweet, though funnier and less fourth wall breaking. Okay, this review is running a little long, so let's make this next one the final episode for this video. Now let's see, it's oh.
藤本さんと原西さんだよ。
No. Episode 17 featured a guest appearance by Fujiwara, a Japanese comedy duo.
And I use the biggest quotation marks possible because they are just the worst.
I've already gone over my dislike for Japanese manzai in my fresh Precure review, and this episode suffers from many of the same problems as that episode, but while Audrey were worse voice actors, Fujiwara were just so much more.
Ready? Precure. Smile charge!
And I get it, comedy is subjective, and I completely agree with that sentiment. I just think that manzai, and especially Fujiwara's brand of comedy, go against too many of the fundamentals. Most notably, how both men early into their routine often end up becoming both the Stooges with no straight man in sight.
It'd be like trying to do Who's on First, but both guys are Costello. It just doesn't work.
Really, I think the only time these two were remotely funny was, ironically enough, when the villains put a spell on them that made them botch up their routine.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. Superheroes and comedians should never mingle. I mean, just imagine if they pointlessly threw them into the new Hero Academia movie and... darn it all.
Alright, for real this time, this video needs to end on an actual high note. Now let's see. An episode written by Yuko Yamada, the head writer of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, perfect. It's a sports festival episode where Nao nominates the Precure for the relay race. All 5 of them practice hard to get better, especially Yayoi, who realizes she's the weak link in their team. Not helped by the fact that her own classmates are talking about her lack of athleticism behind her back. Of course, Nao gives her the encouragement she needs, especially during one of the more unique Monster of the Week fights. It is a fairly standard, though still very touching filler episode with a great ending that I won't spoil. About the only negative I can point out about it is a callback to the last episode, but other than that, good stuff. Also, is it just me, or is Reika competing with Miyuki over who's the greatest meme generator?
So yeah, that was the first 18 episodes of Smile Precure, and it was a decent start, though not without some bumps in the road.
As far as general character introductions and world building goes, this show handled it competently. We got to know each of the main heroines and villains pretty well, and got a clear idea of the conflict and primary objective of both sides. That said, world building isn't that hard when the foundation used to construct it is anything but complex. For one thing, the cure decors are one of the most inconsistent MacGuffins in all of Precure. The grand majority of them are used as one-off gags, and the few actually useful ones are quickly forgotten about, and yet these are the things that are eventually going to restore the fairy tale kingdom back to normal. Meanwhile, on the villain side, there's a lot of inconsistencies with Bato energy. Sometimes they need to gather from a crowd of people, other times a couple of little girls or even bugs are enough. Granted, these issues don't outright ruin the anime, but they're also indicative of this show's weaker writing. At the end of the day, this first third of the anime at least is a very simplistic good versus evil plot. Hence why there is a lot of room for filler of varying quality.
So then why is this series remembered by fans like myself? Well, I think it has more than a little to do with a certain thing called charm.
Again, much like Car Ranger, Smile at times does feel like a self-aware parody of Precure and the magical girl genre as a whole, which would explain the many memeable faces, dialogue, and cheesy tone that makes for a much more digestible easy watch. I'd much rather watch a series like this than something that took its silly concepts way too seriously. Still, good comedy and memes can't support a show forever, as Car Ranger proved. And we do need at least some actual plot to move things along. And as it just so happens, the head writer did start to become a little more involved in the show starting for the second third.
Does she shake things up for the better? Well, come back next time as we focus in on a writer that I have a serious love-hate relationship with.